There's a body of water on earth which, except for a few kind of microbes, has no life in it at all. It has not been caused by man's strip mining, nor has it been by man's development of industry polluting the water. It is not by a nuclear spill, and it's not caused by a farmer's hog lot. This body of water has been sentenced to death by nature itself. And if it was sentenced by nature, it was God's choice. And I believe this body of water should serve as an object lesson to us and what happens when things aren't done the way the Lord desires them to be for us. This body of water is referred to as the Dead Sea. The Jordan River runs into it. The Jordan River is often used in many different phrases as we cross over the Jordan from life into death. And all the different stories we have in the Bible are talking about the Jordan, and it is referred to oftentimes as a river of life. But it runs into this body which is dead. Why is it dead? The Dead Sea is a depression in the ground that is actually lower than sea level. So that water, once it gets to the Dead Sea, has no way to go anywhere else other than evaporate. But there's something else that we need to look at this body of water. Why is it dead? It is dead because it always takes and never gives. All other bodies of water flow into the ocean, and even in the book of Ecclesiastes, it talks about the waters, the rivers run into the oceans, and yet the oceans are not full. But the Dead Sea is different. It doesn't overfill. The water evaporates out of it, but because it never runs into the ocean and gets diluted with other bodies of water, all the impurities that have ever entered the Jordan River or any other river that drains to the Dead Sea, those impurities are stuck there in the Dead Sea and cannot get out. So the water evaporates, the water vapor goes up, but all the impurities that have ever been into those rivers that drain into the Dead Sea, they accumulate there and never leave. And since it always takes and never gives, it takes in water, never gives up the water other than through evaporation, it violates God's golden rule of life. And I believe it's one of God's nature lessons to us if we study it. As we mentioned, as the water evaporates, it cannot purge itself of its solids. And so, as a result, it is 6 times as salty as the ocean is. And even at a depth of 1,000 feet, the water contains 27% dissolved solids. And if you've always sank and been scared of drowning in any other body of water you went into, you won't hear. The water is so dense, you can't sink. You stay on top. You will float on the surface without a floating device, because the Dead Sea violates the law of nature that God doesn't want anything to just take and never give. It breaks the circle of life. When an acorn is planted, it takes nutrients from the soil to sustain the germ of life within it, given by God, but the tree also helps to sustain other forms of life. That acorn, when it's planted and it sprouts, as soon as it forms leaves, it processes carbon dioxide from the air. It keeps the carbon atom and releases oxygen for us to use. So as it grows, it is also giving back to God's world as it grows. It takes a little and gives back the rest. And even in death, the tree enriches the soil. Once a tree dies, it decomposes and leaves that spot on earth with richer soil than it was before the tree existed. After death, it supports life by giving insects a home, and the insects provide food for the birds, and so on the circle of life goes. As the tree rots, it enriches the soil. So that's the way God designed the entire world, is that we take a little and everything that is alive gives back something. But the Dead Sea, I believe, is an object lesson to us of what happens when all you do is take and never give. Getting a lesson together for Sunday morning is no different than the cycle of life of the oak tree we spoke of earlier. A speaker can spend anywhere from 2 hours to 30 hours preparing a Sunday morning lesson if you do it thoroughly. You have to give of yourself in order to make that lesson edifying to us and glorifying to God. And it can oftentimes make the speaker feel like Solomon in his writing in Ecclesiastes, the 2nd chapter, verses 18 and 19, where he has a point in his life where he looks around him and he says he hated all of his labor which he had taken under the sun, because he has to leave that labor to the man that shall come after me, and who knows whether he shall use it wisely. So the speaker can spend all these hours putting together a lesson of which lasts 30 minutes. And some of you will be like the parable. You will hear it, but you won't listen. It won't register. So as the parable of the seeds, some fall along the way, some grow, and some do nothing. So it is with us as Christians. We have to decide whether we are going to be a taker only, or are we going to give back to what the Lord has granted to us through our daily lives? But even if everybody in here misses the message that I try to present, I as a speaker should have benefited from my study. So it's up to you to do something when we come to church with what's presented and applying it to being Christ-like. When the speaker gives a lesson, he benefits just as the oak tree does from his preparation, his giving. And if he does it right, you benefit also, because you're reminded of what the Lord wants out of us. You're encouraged to keep the faith. Just as we benefit from the oak giving off oxygen for us to breathe, the oak benefits by the giving also in obtaining the carbon. If you want your religion to survive, to grow, you must give of yourself as well as your blessings. It is one of the laws of nature for survival. Whether it is giving a lesson up here, reading, praying, you must give to achieve. Whether it is being a teacher, a mother, or a father, you must give to achieve. Whether it is calling the sick, encouraging your depressed brother or sister, you must give to achieve. Offering Bible studies to those outside of the Lord, you must give to others to receive. As the Dead Sea violates God's law of nature in only taking and never giving, and making itself therefore dead, I find it ironic that the Dead Sea also covers up the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, two dead cities to God in the Old Testament that were totally given to homosexuality. And God would have saved them if they could have even found 10 righteous souls in those cities, but they couldn't. They refused to accept the laws of God and continued in their own sin, doing that which was unnatural. We find that in Romans, the first chapter, verses 24 through 27. So, fulfilling those kind of desires breaks the circle of life, because those kind of choices of satisfying personal desires instead of God's desires is not a practice that can perpetuate life. It can only perpetuate decay. Thomas Gibbons wrote this following poem. He who receives but does not give is as stagnant and unattractive as the Dead Sea. All the fresh waters of the Jordan River cannot enliven and refreshen its dead salt depths, for it self-devotedly receives and never gives. It hoards and never shares. Its own self-absorption has consigned it to death, the Dead Sea. Comparatively, all the streams of God's bounty cannot animate and invigorate a heart that has no outlet, a heart that ever receives but never overflows and gives. Like the Dead Sea, such a self-centered existence is only a dead life. That man may last, but he never lives. Who much receives, but nothing gives. Whom none can love, whom none can thank. Creation's blot, creation's blank. We choose what we do with our lives and whether we become productive or whether we become as the Dead Sea. So, as you go through life, if you continually, day by day, take in the blessings of life and never give out in return to what the Lord has blessed you with, you're no different than the Dead Sea. We have to apply our life to accomplish something. Continually receiving and never acknowledging the giver, the Creator. Now we said if the oak tree wants to live, it has to give. If it only takes and takes and takes, it would be like the Dead Sea. What would happen if the tree only gave and gave and gave? It would die. So it requires a balance in order to be successful and achieve things in life. It seems that no matter what the subject, you can see life teaching us a general rule of thumb in most things. Too much of anything is not good. The story growing up that I remember, the Midas touch of a person that wanted to make everything in his life turn to gold. He didn't think about the fact that when he touched the food would turn to gold. And he would eventually starve to death because of his fulfillment of his desire for everything to turn to gold. So we have to figure out how to balance our lives, that we take what we need, but we give what we can. It's true that Christ had to give all to save us. But as we try to raise a family and mature ourselves, life has taught me you have to give and take. Because when we think about people being reluctant to, as they refer to as a handout, it's not always a handout. It's part of life that teaches us that everybody in life has a moment in life where they need somebody else. They need a helping hand. In Acts, the 20th chapter, verse 35, it says, "It is more blessed to give than to receive." So the way that that verse is worded, it is implying that both events are blessed. It's blessed both to give, and it's also blessed to receive. It's just more blessed if you find yourself in a position where you can give. But who among us would be able to give if there wasn't somebody willing to receive? It takes humility oftentimes to accept something from somebody else, because pride can make us feel like we need to fulfill our own needs and not accept help. But that's part of life, to humble us, to realize that none of us can accomplish everything in life ourselves, but we need help from others as well as help from God. So it is a blessed thing when you humble yourself to receive the help from someone else, and you're allowing them to please God by also giving of themselves. We've addressed our duties of giving back as we have prospered, but what about the spiritual? In today's society, we have what is called the truth in labeling law. When we go to buy something, we're supposed to be able to tell the ingredients that are in that product. What if there was a law that way about people that identified themselves as being Christians? Under the Truth in Labeling Act, would you have to say I'm basically a consumer Christian or a producer Christian? Or would both ingredients be involved in your label? If we always come to church hoping someone will say something or do something or sing something or teach something that will lift me up, that will inspire me today, you are a consumer Christian. If you come to church and bring something to contribute to others, you are a producer Christian. Christ gave himself for us, hoping that we would follow his example of taking what you need to live and giving to help others live. A consumer Christian may mistakenly believe one of two things: I have nothing to give, or I don't need to give of myself. I'm giving my money. I believe that's all that's required of me. I'm here. I believe that's all that's required of me. When we look back at the parable that Jesus spoke about, the talents that were given to people, and one man received 5 talents, and he was able to double that before the master came back. Another received 3, and he doubled his 3 talents. And a person that was given 1 talent buried it in the dirt and just gave back what he had been given, and had no growth achieved by having possessed that talent. The Lord has given us all talents, or all blessings. Someday we will give an account of our lives and what we've done with our talents. And we have to be able to take those talents, use that talent to fulfill our own need and then give those talents to help others if we want to be Christ-like. For those that feel secure in the fact they believe there is a God, they believe that Jesus was the Son of God, be reminded of what James, the 2nd chapter, verse 19 says, Thou believest that there is one God? Thou doest well. The devils also believe and tremble. If all you have is a belief that Jesus is the Son of God, you haven't developed your talents the way the Lord would like you to do. In order to have God in our lives, we have to follow Christ's examples and become producers as well as consumer Christians. We have to be able to give, because Matthew, the 7th chapter, 21 through 23, reminds us that not all that call on the name of the Lord will be saved, but those that keep his commandments. John, the 14th chapter, tells us, if you love me, keep my commandments. 2 John 6 says, this is love, that we walk after his commandments. John 14:21, he that hath my commandments and keepeth them, he it is that loveth me. I always enjoy looking at an oak tree. And when I look at them, I try to estimate from the years that I spent cutting trees 30, 40 years ago, how old that tree is and what was happening when it first brought forth life. I have a giant bur oak down by one of my ponds that if you stand by it, it's about 6 foot across. It's got a double trunk on it. And I know it was there when the Civil War took place, when President Abraham Lincoln was serving our country, and probably much longer than that. And you see, it was content to be in that one spot that the Lord gave it, and it is produced for 200 years or whatever time it was. And it has taken what it needed to grow and has given back to support other forms of life. That is the goal that all of us should be. What do we say? Be like Christ or be like an oak tree. Take what you need to survive and share the rest. And don't become a dead body such as the Dead Sea. If there's something that we can help you improve your relationship with God with, we give you that opportunity to come forward and share that desire as we offer an invitation song.